don't know if you're a big football fan or not, but if you watch football at all, one of the things you'll notice is that before the kickoff and before an extra point or a field goal, especially if it's a long field goal, the kicker will actually take the football that would normally stand this way and he'll grab it and push from both ends. He pushes really hard. Now, the amount of air pressure in the ball is significant. In fact, the whole football scandal a few years back during the Super Bowl was whether or not they underinflated the footballs to get a better grip on them when they were wet and kept the pressure different for when it was cold to kick them. But see, assuming that the football itself has a certain amount of air pressure inside it, whatever that is, I think it's 16 psi. Feel free to type in the comments if I'm wrong on that amount of pressure, but here's what I do know happens. When you play in Houston against the Texans on one week, and then you play in Denver against the Broncos another week, the pressure from the outside of the ball at sea level versus at Mile High Stadium is different, which means the shape of the ball is a little different, which means the kick of the ball is a little different, which means the way that the ball flies through the air is a little bit different. And so I say that to say there are different places in your life as a leader that you're going to find different pressure. Some of them have to do with your altitude. So the sea level in Houston versus the highest altitude in Denver at over 5,000 feet, which is a mile high, 5,254, I think, 5,256, something like that. So if you're at sea level versus a mile high, the distance between those two, the altitude difference between those two is so great that it changes the way the ball reacts. And in your life, there are going to be those things that you do at the lowest level where the pressure doesn't seem nearly as intense. And so what happens in your life when you respond at that level of life is going to be completely different than how you respond to the same pressure at a higher altitude. The pressure of your friends, the peer pressure when you're 12, 13, 14 years old, may cause you to do silly things. I remember when I was 13, 14, 15 years old and we had a little gang. I say that almost in jest, gang. We called ourselves the Mosquitoes. And our greatest crime, if you will, was we would steal the zip ties out of the phone boxes where they had the little junctions for landlines all over town. We would open those up and take out the big giant zip ties and put them around our head with the extra part of the strip going forward. And we would wander around town at 3 o'clock in the morning doing things like moving for sale signs to the next door neighbor's house. Yeah, we were a vicious gang, vicious, horrible gang. I'm kidding. But the peer pressure created by that group of friends that I hung out with that moment in my life was a little different than the peer pressure when I got into basic training. It was a little different than the peer pressure that I have as an entrepreneur leading a business and driving change. The way that I do things now, the way that I do business now is entirely different than the way I would have done business in my 20s. The jobs that I have, the bills that I have, the people in my life that are counting on me, that depend on me, entirely different than what they were 5 years ago. And that reality changes the pressure because of the altitude, because I've grown in my life, because I have more responsibility, because the things that I do and say impact more people, I have greater pressure to do it right. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but when you go deep sea diving, there's a certain level that the human can go where they have to have, obviously you have to have an oxygen tank, or it's best to have an oxygen tank if you're going to dive. You want to have flippers, you want to have a mask, and you want to do that because it's hard to see underwater and it's hard to breathe underwater unless you're a fish. But even with that equipment, there's only so low you can go below sea level before the pressure will crush the human body. At that point, you have to have a submarine, or you have to have some kind of apparatus. Maybe you've seen the old big metal ball that they would screw onto somebody's suit, and the bodysuit itself was pressurized with air and weighted down with steel, and they would drop them into the water, and they would sink to the bottom, and they'd have to pull them back up with a hoist. Well, it's like being in a personal submarine. Well, technology's changed a little bit since then, but the idea is still the same. The deeper you go below sea level, the greater the pressure. The higher you go from sea level, the greater the pressure. You see, sea level is kind of the norm. Sea level is our life at adolescence. Sea level is our life when things are okay, when we just move along as normal. Life on Earth as we know it. But get in an airplane and get up there to 30,000 feet and try to open a window. And what you're going to notice is because of the pressure outside the cabin, they've created pressure inside the cabin. The pressure inside the cabin is what allows you to breathe, because without that, you would suffocate. Your lungs would constrict, and your ability to breathe would be gone. So oxygen and airflow is pumped into the cabin to cause the fuselage to stay in the same shape. See, under pressure, you've got to find a way to equalize pressure, and it doesn't matter if you're diving to the depths of the sea or rising above the mountains. When the pressure on you is great, the pressure in you has to be greater. So how do you create pressure inside yourself? That water had a bone in it. The greatest way to create pressure inside yourself is preparedness. Do your homework. Do the research. Understand what it is that you're going into. You wouldn't just go off and jump onto a boat and go out to sea and dive down to 10,000 feet and expect to live having done no research whatsoever. Whether you got eaten by a shark because you're in the wrong kind of water, or you drown because you have no diving equipment, or you get crushed because you dive too deep. All of those factors are factors that the research would have answered for you before you got there. All of those problems would have been addressed in doing your homework properly before you started. But by not having done the homework, you were not prepared for the pressure that was coming. I hear that one of the challenges for employees today, and for employers as well, is that people will come into a job with a certain set of expectations, and those expectations are not met. I didn't climb the ladder fast enough. I didn't get the pay raise fast enough. I don't get to do what I like to do often enough. And all of those challenges create pressure. Pressure for the employer, pressure for the employee. And that pressure will crush you. Eventually, you'll give up. Employees are quitting jobs because they didn't see the top of the mountain right away. Well, why didn't they see the mountain right away? They didn't see the top of the mountain right away because they weren't prepared to climb the mountain. They thought somehow, I'm going to get this job and a helicopter is going to drop me off at the highest level. I'm going to get a helicopter ride right to my success. See, no one takes a helicopter ride to the top of Mount Everest and considers themselves a mountain climber. But there are people who've climbed to the top of Mount Everest, and they've done it with a lot of training. A lot of training. Days and days and days exposed to inclement weather. Months and months and months of climbing smaller mountains and climbing smaller mountains and climbing smaller mountains and climbing smaller mountains. And they intentionally put themselves under pressure in areas where it's miserably uncomfortable, in ways that their life looks like, I'm just not going to make it past this. Because when they make it past this, they've built up the pressure on the inside so they can withstand the pressure on the outside. You may have heard John Maxwell say dozens of times, good leaders are readers, constantly reading new books by new people, always. Adding things to the repertoire of what I know and understand so that I can become a master in some areas, but also have a breadth of knowledge in other areas. All of those are important elements of building the pressure inside, the preparation, the practice, the rehearsal, the reading, the gathering of information inside so that you can equalize the pressure. You've got to know that what's in you is equal to or greater than what's on the outside. If you've got the ability to turn on the pressure on the inside, the discipline, the diligence, the determination, the dignity to live a life of excellence, that you're going to do the hard work, you're going to show up early, you're going to stay late, you're going to pour in, you're going to grind your fingernails to the nub if that's what you have to do to hold on, then you're going to find yourself in that place that no matter what pressure is coming, you can withstand it. And if you're not willing to do those things, if you're not willing to do the hard work, if you're not willing to stay at it, if you're not willing to get up early in the morning and stay up late at night and grind all day long, then the pressure of being a leader will crush you. The pressure of being a parent could crush you. The pressure of being an entrepreneur could crush you. The pressure of being a good employee could crush you. You've got to be willing to read to grow yourself. You've got to be willing to diligently do the hard work. And you've got to be willing to diligently invest in practice and preparedness. Doing that thing over and over again to get yourself ready to be under pressure. If the pressure outside of you is enormous, the pressure inside you must be greater. Now, if you're a believer in the Bible like I am, you've probably read that verse, greater is he that's in you than he that's in this world. Meaning the pressure inside you is already greater if you call on it. The pressure inside you, the ability to do the life of excellence, the power to live a godly life is already alive inside of you. You simply have to call on it. Meaning surrender yourself and ask him to do it. And he will. In the picture of tag team wrestling, many times in the old WWE, you would see one guy in the ring being pummeled by two opponents, and sometimes they'd even call in somebody else, and he's being beaten senseless in the middle of the ring. But his opponent with integrity, his teammate with integrity, is standing outside watching these opponents beating, and he's reaching as far as he can. He's saying, just tag up. Just tag up. I can whip all three of these guys. Just tag up. You just got to tag up. The minute you touch my hands, I'm going to unleash fury on your opponents. Greater is he that's in you than he that's in the earth. This pressure inside of you, the excellence inside of you, the power inside of you is greater than anything outside of you. But you got to tag up. If you're not prepared, he is. If you're not ready, he is. If you haven't put in the time, he has. If you haven't done the practice, he has. And in some cases, he will stand in the gap and do for you what you cannot do. In all cases, it's possible through him what's impossible through you. But there are those times that he's going to look at you and go, I can't pay your tithe. I can't show up to church. I can't read your Bible. You got to do that. You've got to do your own push-ups. If you want the pressure inside you to be greater than the pressure outside you, you've got to know your limitations and when to hand off, but you also have to know what's your responsibility. No one else can grow you personally. That's on you. No one else can do your practice. That's on you. No one else can sit out in the cold if you're going to climb Mount Everest. You can't pay someone else to prepare so that you can go climb Mount Everest. You might pay someone to prepare you. They might go out there in the cold with you. They might tell you how to survive in the cold. They might show you how to climb the mountain. They might show you what food you need for survival. They might show you how to endure a snowstorm. But they can't do it for you if you're the one under pressure. And so it is with leadership. And so it is with parenting. And so it is with high school. The pressure that's going to come on you from the outside is going to be great. The pressure from the inside, that's on you. How will you increase the pressure in your life on the inside to match the pressure on the outside? Love you to share some of your comments. Tell me some of the ways that you're building up pressure on the inside. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Make sure you crush that subscribe button on Facebook or YouTube, whichever one you prefer to watch on, and share this with your friends. I would appreciate the exposure. And can also get us on iTunes podcast. If you want to click on that button there in the YouTube link and subscribe over to podcast, then you won't have to worry about being here on the live version on Facebook or YouTube. It will simply come to your inbox on a daily basis or show up in your iTunes list. I appreciate you being a part of this, and I appreciate me having an opportunity to be a part of your day. God bless.